Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to tune in before I get started. I plan to do at least one more hangout right after this one. And then maybe this evening again, I'm going to do a open mic type of hangout where I open it up and have a live discussion with you all. So I hope that you all can tune in tonight. I'm not sure what time it'll be. So hopefully you all can turn on the notification so you'll know exactly when I go live. There are a few things that I want to talk about. Shout out to One Love, One Life. Thanks for tuning in. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen for a second. Shout out to Water Sniper. Thanks for tuning in. Just bear with me one second. So as you can see here, there's this article on Yahoo. I will post a link to this article in the description box so that you all can check it out. Also, I have a link to an article from CNN that talks about this very same issue, about how Donald Trump has disrespected Black women. And these are 3 Black women that he recently disrespected. These are respected journalists who simply asked this man some questions and he responded to them in a very disrespectful manner. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second and just get right into the discussion. Again, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Just bear with me one second. Someone's mowing the lawn, so hopefully it doesn't interfere too much with the quality of the sound coming through in this Google Hangout. And that's the one thing about doing things live, man. You never know how it's going to turn out because anything could pop up. So hopefully you all can hear me. I'll just speak a little bit louder. But I just want to recap a couple of situations that took place involving Donald Trump and Black women. So you had a Black woman journalist from CNN by the name of Abby Phillip. She asked Donald Trump a very important question. She asked him if the new Attorney General, Matt Whitaker, was going to be used to rein in Robert Mueller's investigation of the Trump administration. So in response to that, Donald Trump said, "What a stupid question." Then he went on to say, "I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions." And Abby Phillip is an African-American woman with CNN. So that's one example. And then you have a distinguished journalist by the name of April Ryan, who's been in the business for 21 years. She's covered many White Houses. But Donald Trump referred to this Black woman as a loser. He said, "You talk about someone that's a loser. She doesn't know what she's doing." This is how he describes one of the best journalists in this nation. You know, a renowned African-American woman journalist. And then you had a journalist, a Black woman from PBS NewsHour, who asked Donald Trump about his use of the term nationalist, by him referring to himself as a nationalist, and basically asked him if that's encouraging white nationalism or basically giving a green light to white nationalists and all that kind of stuff. And then he responds to that question. Donald Trump basically said, "I don't know why you're saying that. That's such a racist question." Now, I want to first respond to that. So he said that, and then these aren't the only examples of him attacking Black women or Black people, period. You know, he's made derogatory statements about others, and I'm going to get into that in a second. But let's talk about this whole response that he gave to this journalist with PBS NewsHour. See, often when Black people call out racism, racists like to call the Black person who's speaking out against racism a racist. That's what happens constantly. So when you condemn racism, you're accused of racism. Here this journalist was asking a very legitimate question, because Donald Trump likes to have it both ways. He wants to pretend like he's not a racist, but at the same time, he is speaking the language of white supremacy, of white supremacists. This man is pandering to white supremacists constantly, you know, by incorporating a lot of their terminology and a lot of their rhetoric, you know, giving them a signal that he supports them. That's why you have the alt-right movement supporting Donald Trump. That's why you have Nazis and Klansmen supporting Donald Trump, because he gives them, you know, the green light. He basically lets them know that he's speaking their language, that he supports them on a low. Like when he made those statements during that Charlottesville incident, referred to those people as some very fine people, you know, and by, you know, referring to him as himself as a nationalist, knowing that there's a white nationalist movement that's on the rise in this country. This man refers to himself as a nationalist. That is not by coincidence, that is by design, and it is legitimate for that sister to ask him about that. So instead of addressing that very real question, this man wants to point the finger at the sister for asking it and call that sister a racist. You know, and this happens all the time. Like every time you have a Black leader that speaks out boldly against racism, or just a regular person speaking out against racism, all of a sudden they're accused of racism. You know, here you have a Trump administration that panders to these people, you know, that actually appointed a white supremacist to be his chief political strategist. And he has the nerve to ask, why are people raising these questions? You know, this man has had speech writers that are white supremacists. This man is affiliated with white supremacists, and these white supremacists support him. This man was reluctant to condemn a David Duke. You know, he pretended like he didn't know who David Duke was when asked about it. But yet he wants to make it seem so outlandish that this sister would ask him whether or not he's encouraging these white nationalists by putting out the term, you know, by suggesting that he's a nationalist, by saying that he's a nationalist. You know, this whole anti-immigrant fever that this man is promoting is racist. You know, it plays in to these white supremacists. But when this sister asked him this basic question, he wants to dodge it by pointing the finger at her. And I'm going to try, let me go to that article real quick that I'm relying on for that. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, so the sister was just basically asking him if his rhetoric is helping to embolden these white nationalist groups. And this article is going to be in the description box so that you all can read it for yourself. But that's a very real question, because we've seen incidents of violence at the hands of these white supremacists. You know, it was a white supremacist that went in that synagogue and shot and killed all those people. Oh, you know, white supremacists, every other day you're hearing about something that they're involved in. And they're being egged on by the man that's supposed to be protecting the public from white supremacists. And the sister's question is on point for another reason. You know, this man defunded investigating these white supremacist groups, and he focused on, you know, investigating these so-called Muslim terrorists, or, you know, so-called jihadis and stuff like that, even though all the stats and all that kind of stuff since 9/11 point to the fact that these white supremacists here in America are a greater threat than those foreign-based terrorist groups. So her question, again, is very legitimate. And the way he responded to that sister just shows how much he disrespects, not only her as an individual, but Black people as a whole. You know, it just shows the utmost disrespect to the Black community. You know, when we're trying to raise an important issue of racism and him helping to embolden that racism, he dismisses it. And then to refer to this sister, April Ryan, a distinguished journalist, as a loser. I mean, you can't get any more disrespectful than that. I mean, here you have a distinguished sister with a long history, a long track record of excellence, you know, an expert in her field. But because she asked this man some tough questions, all of a sudden she's a loser. This man wants to basically have a dictatorship. He doesn't want a free press. He wants a press that he can control. He doesn't want the press to ask him any tough questions. If you all saw that ridiculous spectacle of a press conference that that man had recently, where he was attacking all the journalists, acting like a child on a temper tantrum. You know, if you saw that, you could see that this man doesn't have any respect for the press. Anytime people are critical of him, he calls them fake news. You know, he dismisses them, he insults them. But yet for him to call his sister a loser, and then when you see this as a part of this overall pattern that he has with dealing in terms of how he deals with Black people, you see that this man is a racist. You see that this man has no respect for Black women. And then you have the question that the sister, Abby Phillip, raised in his response, calling her stupid, you know, basically saying she asked a lot of stupid questions and all that kind of stuff. We know that that plays into the popular stereotypes of Black people as being less intelligent. We know that for the longest time, white supremacists have put forth this notion that Black people are less evolved than white people, that Black people are less intelligent than white people, that, you know, we don't have the same reasoning skills as white people. You have people who have used pseudoscience to try to suggest that we're stupid. And this just plays into that popular racist narrative and, you know, stereotype of Black people. You know, this same man referred to Maxine Waters as a low IQ person. This same man called Don Lemon a Black man, you know, the dumbest man on TV. You know, so this man, statements about this woman being stupid are just a part of a racist pattern with him where he doesn't believe that Black people are intelligent. He believes that Black people are stupid. And his own lawyer, Michael Cohen, says that this man said that Black people are too stupid. He said Black people are too stupid to vote for him. That's why they don't support him. That's why they're not at his rallies. That's what this man thinks about Black people. So we see these examples of him disrespecting Black women. Again, I said that he disrespected Maxine Waters, calling her a low IQ person as well. He also disrespected, you know, this woman who played the role of his mammy at the White House, Omarosa. You know, he called that woman a dog. He said she was a crazed, crying lowlife. This is how he talks about Black people. This is how he talks about Black women. And my question to all these people that want to defend him is like, how in the hell can you as a Black person defend a man that has no respect for Black women? Period. You know, this congresswoman who recently lost her election or whatever, Donald Trump had disrespectful things to say about her simply because she called him out for making racist statements about Haiti and African countries. You will recall that this man referred to Haiti as a shithole country. This man referred to the entire continent of Africa as a shithole. But yet and still, you have these African Americans running around here looking like complete idiots with those Make America Great Again hats on. You know, despite his disrespect of Black women, you don't have hardly any Black men standing up to this man for this foolishness. You know, I was watching this video that this comedian did. I think his name is Earthquake. When I get a chance, I'll post a link in the description box. But he's the only Black man that I saw like openly stand up against Donald Trump on this issue of his treatment of black women. It's like, how can you as a black man sit back and just allow this man to speak to black women with such utter disrespect? And this question goes out to these black male conservatives who are running around with their pom-poms out, with their skirts on, cheerleading for Donald Trump. How can you as a black man stand by that man who has no respect for your women, who disrespects your women, who questions the intelligence of black people, period, who calls a woman a loser, who has a distinguished career? How can you stand behind and support this man? A man that showed time and time again just how little he respects black people. What the hell is wrong with you black men on here defending this guy, vouching for this guy, despite all this racist treatment that he extends towards black people? We saw what he said about the brother Andrew Gillum, called him a thief, discounted his education when comparing him to the white candidate that he was running against. We saw his disrespectful statements about another black woman, Stacey Abrams. So this is a part of a pattern with him. And my question is, like, will any of these black conservatives stand up and say anything about what Donald Trump is doing? About what Donald Trump is saying when it comes to black people and black women in particular? So yeah, let me see what you all are saying about this before I close out. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Yeah, Political Princess says neither does black men. You saying that black men don't respect black women? I mean, and that brings me to another point that I want to raise. First of all, I disagree with your statement. Of course, there are some black men who are misogynistic, especially here on YouTube, but there are plenty of black men that love black women, appreciate black women, defend black women all the time. And that brings me back to my point that I made in my last live stream about how a black man can sacrifice for black women, put his life on the line for black women or defend black people, be committed to the struggle, and you still have people like this particular person, discounting that, downplaying it. Like, with all those black men that have died for our freedom, black men that are locked up for our freedom, you still have people like that clown Cynthia G, saying black men have done nothing for our liberation. You still have people saying that black men don't protect, when this brother gave his life protecting the business establishment that he was hired to protect. So, I mean, I just hate that. And my question is, like, for all those, black angry women that always want to talk about what the black man isn't doing and talk about like how these black men are disrespecting black women, I wonder if any of them have done a video about Donald Trump and his disrespect of black women. I wonder if any of them have done a video about how he disrespected Abby Phillip or April Ryan or the sister with PBS News Hour, or his disrespect of Omarosa. Despite my politics and my disagreement with Omarosa, she's still a black woman and she shouldn't be called, basically he was calling her a bitch by calling her a dog. I wonder if any of these women had anything to say about any of this stuff. What do they have to say with him about Donald Trump calling that distinguished sister, Maxine Waters, a low IQ person? Do they have anything to say about this disrespect? They claim to be about black women's empowerment, but will they speak on this? Will they speak on a president that has no respect for black women or black people? I doubt it. Because some of these people that are all about black women's empowerment and stuff like that, who claim to be about that stuff, are the same people that actually support Donald Trump. Like, you got that right-wing nut, successful Ladies Jive, she's one of these people that support these Republicans and stuff. I mean, what does she have to say about this, man? What do any of these women who claim to be about women's rights have to say about this? Absolutely nothing. You know, they're more concerned with, you know, who the latest black male celebrity is dating than they are concerned with a man who has control over the reins of government and what he thinks about black women. Yeah, so I had to mention that before I closed out. Let me see what else people are saying. DJ Wiz says he doesn't even respect his own wife. That's an actual fact. He has no respect for his wife. I mean, obviously, you know, just seeing how he is like been with all these other women and talked about, you know, sexually assaulting women. This man has no respect for his wife. And, you know, apparently she's in it for the money. You know, obviously she's not in it because of the way he looks or because of his great character as a person. So she's getting what she's paid for, basically. Yeah, that's my question. Living life like it's golden. Like, why aren't black conservatives speaking out against this? These black conservatives bury their heads in the ground so that they cannot see racism. They have blinders over their eyes. They refuse to see racism and call it out for what it is. They refuse to. I mean, like you got that coon Candace Owens running around here supporting Donald Trump and talking about Brexit and all this and that, while he's disrespecting black women and black people. And she claims that black people are the ones on a plantation when she's supporting a man who is disrespecting black women in particular and black people in general. And she has the nerve to say somebody's on a plantation. There isn't a bigger plantation than that Republican Party. A plantation is filled with alt-right people. A plantation is filled with your Richard Spencers and your David Dukes and your KKK and all these other white racist, white supremacist groups. But yeah, those black conservatives, I'm not holding my breath for them to speak out on any of this stuff because these people pretend like racism doesn't exist. I mean, you got one of these fools like that Anthony Brian Logan clown talking about there's no such thing as white privilege and white supremacy is not an issue in this society. You know, these people are completely delusional. Like that guy, Brandon Tate, he says the same type of stuff. It's like these people are paid to downplay the significance of race and racism in the society. They're paid to provide cover and buffer for these white racists like Donald Trump. So I'm not holding my breath, and I don't expect these people to defend black women. They will never defend black women. They will get on here and defend a white racist before they defend a black woman. Like you got that clown Anthony Brian Logan actually defending a woman who had a racist podcast, actually making excuses for her. And when Don Lemon apparently called out white men for being the biggest terrorists in this country, here you had this shucking and jiving Negro, Anthony Brian Logan on here, from what I'm told, actually trying to counter that point, even though all the stats point to that being an actual fact. But that's a whole nother subject. So I'm not holding my breath for any of these white conservatives. You know, I don't expect much from them because often most of these black so-called conservatives are nothing but self-hating turncoats and traitors in our community. That's what they are. They support policies that are openly hostile to their own people. So I don't expect them to defend black people, you know, or black women in particular. I really don't. So let me continue on through your comments before I go. Yeah, and it's like every other day, Donald Trump is banning somebody from the press conferences because they ask him tough questions. And it's just outrageous. And from what I understand, CNN has actually sued Donald Trump so that one of their reporters can return to the press conferences, because what he's doing is wrong, man. You know, excluding journalists because they ask him real questions. I mean, this man basically wants to have a state-run media where people only ask him the things that he wants them to ask, where people only praise him, where journalists don't ask him tough questions or ever criticize him. He wants media just like what they have over there in North Korea or in Russia or some other dictatorship. That's what Donald Trump wants. And, I just hope that the press, remains, committed to free speech, remains vigilant and presses him on these hard questions and doesn't bow down to him. Exactly, living my life. Yeah, I mean, the DOJ under Trump is not doing anything about these white supremacist groups. They're not investigating them like they should. They have backed off of them and they're focusing solely on these foreign-based terrorist groups. Yeah, I mean, that's the $20 million question. Why do Black conservatives still support Donald Trump? Now, I can understand somebody being a Black conservative. That's one thing, but supporting a white racist like Donald Trump is a whole completely other thing. Like, how can you explain that away? And I've gone through it over and over again, like his racist policies, his racist statements, and I won't do so here again. I provided you with a few examples in this hangout, and it's just beyond me. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand why these Black conservatives still support this man. I think that a lot of those Black conservatives are like that girl Treasure from the Dr. Phil show. That Treasure girl, like, apparently had all this hatred towards herself, and identified as white. And I think that, like, on a figurative level, that's how a lot of these Black conservatives are. They don't identify with their people. They identify with white people. They have turned their back on the community. And that's why it's no problem for them to embrace a man like Donald Trump. No, Water Sniper, I didn't hear about that. I'm going to look that up. I may talk about that when I do my open mic tonight. Hopefully, I'll be able to do the open mic tonight. But again, turn on your notifications, everybody, so you'll know exactly when I go live. Just bear with me 1 second. Exactly, living my life. Yeah, I mean, he does think that most Black people are stupid. There's only a few Black people that fall under his exceptions. Those Black people that are ready to shuck and jive and coon for him, those are some intelligent Black people in his mind. Whether it's Ben Carson or, Candace Owens or one of these other coons. See, and like, before I go on, like, I'm just going to say this and I'm going to beat this dead horse until I can't beat it no more, man. I mean, the fact that you have somebody in this White House that has no respect for Black people or Black women in particular, just again reminds us how important elections are, how much our votes actually matter. I mean, here you have a man that is openly hostile to Black people in the highest office in the land. But yet and still, you have these misguided, uneducated people on here telling you that your vote doesn't matter and that you shouldn't vote. We may have prevented the election of this man if more of us participated in the election. And, thankfully, the people were able to fight back against his agenda by taking the House of Representatives, which will make it more difficult for this man to put forth any of his reactionary ideas. It will prevent him from implementing, some of his backwards proposals and all that kind of stuff. So again, we're reminded of how important elections are just with this, these midterms, and also with the fact that you have this white racist in the White House. I mean, you can't profess to be against white supremacy and you're okay with white people, white racists like this person being the president of the United States. And that's basically what people say, implicitly when they say we shouldn't vote. They're basically saying, well, turn over the reins of government to people like Donald Trump. Let them control everything. Let the reactionaries, the racists, the white supremacists take control over government. But yet these same people want to whine and cry about how Donald Trump's a racist. But when they had a chance to use their platform to speak out against Donald Trump or to support another candidate against Donald Trump, they refused to do so. These people, want to talk about how horrible the Democrats are, but these people didn't even encourage people to vote for third-party candidates. That's why I can't take half of these people seriously. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, Donald Trump has no respect for women, period, especially black women. That's true. Yeah, so B Money posted a link. I'm going to try to see if I can go to that link real quick. I'll get to that in a second. Shout out to B Money. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that, B Money, about that black conservative canvassing and getting stopped by the police. Because that is like it's like a metaphor for so many things. Just like you had this black police officer in the previous stream that I did, trying to join the police force, and he gets killed by the police. And I'm sure that black guy that was stopped by those police for canvassing is one of these people that got so much to say about Black Lives Matter, talking, defending the police and all that kind of stuff. I'm really interested in digging deeper into that. And I will be doing a live stream on that. I don't know if it's going to be a part of my overall series of live stream. I'm going to do the open mic thing tonight, hopefully. I may include it in that. So y'all look out for that, or I may do it as a separate hangout, but I hope that y'all can stick around and check that out. And I want to let you all know before I go any further into your chat comments, I want to do one more live stream right after this about that woman, this white racist woman running for the Senate in Mississippi, who made some statements about attending a public hanging and all that kind of stuff. So I hope y'all can stick around for that. But yeah, that whole incident involving that black conservative canvassing and getting stopped by the police, that speaks volumes. These same Negroes that want to pretend like racism is not a reality in this country, who want to downplay their racism and all that kind of stuff. I wonder what they're going to say when they're faced in, with situations like what that black canvasser faced when they're stopped by the police simply for being black. Yeah, I think some of these people are literally getting paid to spew that nonsense. I agree with you on that, living my life. I think that's a great point, because some of these people actually work with this organization called Turning Point USA. They are propping these puppets up, propping up people like that Brandon Tatum guy and Candace Owens. These people are not self-made. They get propped up by these white conservatives so they can serve as mouthpieces for far-right policies that are contrary to the interests of black people. That's what they're paid for, and that's what they do. It's no coincidence that you see people like this Brandon Tatum and this Candace Owens and Diamond and Silk and them on these programs on Fox. That's by design. These people are being paid to sell out black people. And again, you know, I would welcome any of these people to an actual debate live. I would love to debate these people. Yeah, so somebody said Mr. Research is the only black conservative that he's seen speak out on racism. I'm not familiar with that person. Yeah, so I opened your link. Yeah, that's the story that I came across earlier, B Money. I'm going to, again, do a video about that or talk about it during the hangout tonight. But thanks for bringing it to my attention. So somebody that's going by the name of the spook who sat by the door said, wrong, I'm a black conservative and I'm always addressing racism. Now, I'm not familiar with you. I don't know if you have an audience or not. Let me see if I can go to your page. Let me see. I'm not going to share the screen just yet. Yeah, it looks like you don't have an audience. You know, I think that what we're talking about is people that have like these audiences, you know, these large platforms. Rarely are they speaking out on any kind of racism at all. Rarely, if ever. You know, instead, these people defend racists. They provide excuses for racists. And so that's why it's no surprise that they would support a man that has no respect for black women. None whatsoever. Yeah, so I want to thank y'all for tuning in. You know, I appreciate it. Yeah, so let me respond to Miss Legit. Shout out to Miss Legit. Part two, you know, there are some things that I agree with her on and some things that I don't. You know, when it comes to voting and, you know, electoral politics, like we have differences of opinion. And I understand what you're saying about like how black people shouldn't be Democrats or Republicans. I understand why somebody would say that they're equivalent. You know, I think that that's just outright false. You know, they are not equivalent. You know, they are not one and the same. You know, there are fundamental differences between the two parties. And for someone to put them on the same level, it's just wrong. I mean, especially when you compare, all you have to do is compare Donald Trump's administration to Obama's administration. And you will see a night and day difference when it comes to criminal justice issues, when it comes to voting rights, when it comes to affirmative action, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to so many different issues. I mean, the list goes on, and I won't bore people by going through it right now, but there are fundamental differences between the two parties. You know, one party has nominated black people to be governors and even president of the United States. You can't say that for the Republican Party. One party openly welcomes white supremacists. You know, white supremacists flock to one of the parties. You know, the white supremacists like Richard Spencer, like David Duke, and, you know, all these white racist groups. It's not a coincidence that they support Donald Trump. You know, the policies that these two parties have are completely different when it comes to immigration. So I think that it is overly simplistic to basically say that they're one and the same. They're both white supremacy. Now, don't get me wrong, there are problems with both parties, but you can't say that they're two sides of the same coin. You know, they are fundamentally different. If you just look at the platforms that these candidates run on, if you compare the platform of Andrew Gillum to DeSantis' platform, you will see that there are fundamental differences. When you compare the sister Stacey Abrams' platform to Brian Kemp's platform, you will see that there are fundamental differences between the two parties and these different candidates. And I think that what happens is we don't want to do the heavy lifting. We don't want to do the work of research and dig into these candidates and research what their positions are on different issues, research what the different parties' issues, stances are on important issues that affect us. That's what happens. So people become like intellectually lazy and they just assume that these two parties are one and the same. And that's why you could have, somebody like that Tariq Nasheed clown on here telling people not to vote, suggesting that voting is not important and all that kind of stuff. These people suggest that all politicians are corrupt. And that's not true. There are plenty of politicians that are for the people. There are some that are corrupt, but it's up to the people to do their research. It's up to the people to hold these politicians accountable. I reject the notion that they're all like one and the same. There are similarities like in foreign policy and all that kind of stuff that have to be addressed. There are situations where both parties, there are examples of racist policies that both parties have been involved in and all that kind of stuff. And that should be called out. And I'm one of the people that call out, the racism within the Democratic Party. You all saw that during the presidential election, those of you who've been following me for some time, you know that I did not support Hillary Clinton because of policies that her and her husband supported. They were hostile to the interests of Black people, like the crime bill and like so-called welfare reform. I talked about those things. And when you look at what the Clintons did, they were basically incorporating Republican ideas so that they could triangulate, so-called triangulate, and bring in Republican supporters to vote for them and stuff. So, I understand that there are problems with some Democrats and some elements of the Democratic Party, but again, to compare the two and basically say they're one and the same is just outright false, and I just think that it's intellectually lazy, man. So that's what I had to say about that. No disrespect intended, man. And Miss Legit, I would love to debate you live too. We could talk about this live. Hopefully tonight I won't be able to do the live stream. It may be around 7 o'clock or later. So again, y'all hit that notification bell. And I may just go ahead and post a link for that. I'm going to just start off by posting the link for all the people that have things that they want to talk about, or people that want to challenge my views about voting. Like I've received, quite a few negative comments from people, criticizing my views on voting. I saw a hangout that, some people did, and they were talking about this issue of voting. I would love to debate anybody live on this issue of voting. All these YouTube personalities, that have been basically discouraging people to vote, basically saying Black people shouldn't vote and all that kind of stuff, or downplaying the significance of voting. I would love to debate these people. Love to debate them live. No matter how big they are, quote unquote big they are. I'll debate a Boyce Watkins or, Robert Perkins or, Black Authority or any of these people on here telling Black people that our vote doesn't matter and, downplaying the significance of voting, while at the same time, talking about Black empowerment and stuff. Here you have a man that has no respect for Black women or Black people, period. But yet these people, when able to use their vote to counter his agenda, they're telling Black people not to vote or suggesting that our vote doesn't matter. I can't take people like that seriously, man. And I just think that people should do their research, because these two parties, again, are not one and the same. All right, so let me go back to these comments before I sign out. Again, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Yeah, the Black vote is important. A lot of Democrats on a state level and a national level, they can't get elected without Black voters. And I just think that we really need to leverage that fact to get more from that party. And, you know, as I said before, in many ways, the Democratic Party is more beneficial to Black people. But still, there's much more that we could get from them if we put the right amount of pressure on them to, you know, and make legitimate demands of them. And we do this all the time. I mean, there are organizations that do this, but we need more of it. We need to apply more pressure to them before we actually vote for particular candidates. But I don't think just holding back our vote just for the sake of holding it back, I don't think that's going to accomplish anything. All that's telling the people is that you don't vote. And by not voting, you don't count. I mean, it's like if there's a community of people that don't vote, no politicians is going to run to that community trying to get them to vote if they know that that community doesn't vote. And that's why, like, for instance, poor communities get neglected because a lot of times they don't vote in large numbers. You know, it's no coincidence that these politicians go to Black churches and all that kind of stuff and go before Black traditional civil rights organizations. They go before them because they know that those groups of people actually vote. Rarely do these groups go before any of these. I mean, you haven't seen not one politician go to any of these YouTube personalities that's talking this don't vote nonsense. And not hardly any of these people on here that talk all this withhold your vote nonsense, you know, have any kind of political agenda at all. You know, Tariq Nasheed, as I mentioned in my last hangout, he presented some juvenile, you know, really simplistic, you know, ABC type of agenda or whatever, only when asked about it. Only when asked. And it was very basic and not comprehensive at all. But these are the people that y'all want to listen to. I mean, these are y'all leaders and stuff on here. Just because somebody can tell jokes and make you laugh, that doesn't make them a Black leader at all. But as Malcolm X said, we're the only people that had like entertainers as our leaders, man. Anyway, let me continue on. I'm getting sidetracked a little bit, and I don't want this to be too long. Exactly, James Hall. Like if the national media was like Fox News, Trump would be happy. He would be absolutely happy because they wouldn't ask him any tough questions. All they would do was propagate his propaganda. And yeah, so the Black vote is like a swing vote, and we do have the potential to control the outcome of these elections. So that is a valid point, Miss Legit. Let's see. Yeah, so Miss Legit said they already have control whether we vote or not. That's not necessarily true. If we vote, like we have to, like for instance, in Florida, you have a man that's supported by white supremacists. That guy, Ron DeSantis, he's supported by white supremacists. They set up robocalls, basically making all kinds of racist innuendos and statements about Andrew Gillum, you know, making anti-Semitic statements as well. Ron DeSantis is their candidate. You can't tell me that they have control whether we vote or not when we had the potential to elect an African-American governor in Florida over a white man who has the support of white supremacists. You can't tell me they're going to be in control either way. So I don't accept that. I'm glad that you did vote. I think that more people need to vote. And nobody's saying that just voting alone is the answer to our problems. Nobody's suggesting that at all. But if you have many tools in your arsenal, why give up one that's very important? And voting is one tool. It's one tool by which you can express your opinions, put forth your priorities by picking candidates that support your positions and that prioritize issues that are important to you. So it's not a solution, but it's one of the means by which we can affect some kind of change in society. I mean, have we forgotten that laws are what help make it possible for us to have certain advances in this society? Laws enacted by elected officials, laws like the Civil Rights Act, laws like the Voting Rights Act, laws like the Fair Housing Act and Fair Sentencing Act, et cetera, et cetera. While those laws aren't perfect and they haven't solved every problem that we have, they've made it possible for us to begin to address problems of racism in society. And we can't deny that. I think that too often we take things for granted. From a position of comfort, we want to pretend like everything is as horrible as it's always been. Go ask your grandparents, are things the same? Talk to your elders, those that lived under Jim Crow, and ask them if everything is the same. All right, so let me see. Someone else posted a link. Let's see what this link is about. Yeah, so someone posted a link about the brother who was a security guard and was killed by police. For those of you who didn't see it, I just did a hangout about that a few minutes before I started this one. So I hope you all can check that out. Yeah, I mean, the electoral college is problematic, but it's one thing to point out about the electoral college. Like, it's set up in such a way that the electors are pledged to vote according to the popular vote within their particular states. So they're pledged to vote that way. And even though, like, overall, like, you have a difference in the numbers between like the popular vote and the electoral college, the thing about the electoral college is it makes whoever's elected more representative of people around the country instead of certain populations. Like, for instance, you have certain states with large populations. So all somebody would have to do is pander to the states with the largest populations, and they would win the presidential election if you just had a straight popular vote. So the interests of other people from less popular or populist type of states and stuff like that would have less influence over these elections. So that is one of the positive sides of having an electoral college. And again, it just has to be pointed out that those electors are pledged to vote according to the popular vote within their particular jurisdictions. And rarely do they vote contrary to the popular vote in those particular jurisdictions and states. And the very few times where electors have voted contrary to the popular vote, it didn't affect the outcome of the election. So I just think that we shouldn't be caught up into exaggerating this electoral college. I think that, it probably is a good idea to just go towards straight popular vote for the president. But then again, the only drawback is, you will have certain states that are less populous not having their interests represented when it comes to presidential elections. And, one thing that has to be pointed out, like, even though the president is elected through an electoral college, no other politician is elected that way. So that's no excuse for you not voting for your U.S. senator or your state of representatives, your representative in the House of Representatives or whatever, or for your officials on the local level, your governors, your mayors, and your city council people, your district attorneys, and your local judges. So, yeah, and I don't buy this whole thing that the president is selected, and not elected. I mean, that's like popular rhetoric here on YouTube. The fact of the matter is, again, these electors vote according to the popular vote in their states. So it's no situation where they're quote unquote selected. These same people that say this stuff all the time, they can't point to any case where where so many electors voted contrary to the popular vote within their state, that those electors actually voted in a way that was contrary to, what the people in those particular states voted for, and in such a way that it actually affected the outcome of the election. And I frankly challenge these people to provide an example of where the electors voted contrary to the interests or contrary to the vote within their particular state or jurisdiction, and it actually affected the outcome of the election. I challenge these people to produce such an example. All these people that say the president is selected and not elected. Yeah, so James Hall said that Black conservatives don't address racism until they experience it. Exactly. I mean, even though I don't think that what Clarence Thomas faced was racism, he all of a sudden he wants to act like he's some social justice warrior when he faces those sexual harassment allegations. He want to talk about like how he's a victim of a high-tech lynching and all that kind of stuff. And then that Candace Owens clown, like she always likes to play the race card while she condemns people that actually speak on real racism, condemns groups like Black Lives Matter. But when it's convenient for her, she wants to call somebody a racist for simply stating the obvious. Like when that actor that plays Captain America had something to say about Kanye West and his ignorant ass statements on Twitter, all of a sudden she wants to label that guy as a racist. But this is how these people operate. They play the race card when it's convenient, but when there are actual real issues of racism, those clowns are silent. All right. Yeah, so I'm going through these. Y'all got to bear with me a second. So Miss Legit said, what is it that Democrats are doing or have done? I cited a couple of examples. All we have to do is look at the Obama administration, for example, and I can just rattle off a whole bunch of things that he did. The Brothers Keepers program, the Executive Order for Excellence in Black Education, the Fair Sentencing Act, which reduced the disparity between crack and powder cocaine. The Obama administration getting rid of mandatory minimums for nonviolent drug offenders. The Obama administration granted clemency to many nonviolent drug offenders, many of whom are Black. Affirmative action, defending affirmative action, and Fisher versus University of Texas, defending voting rights in the case of Shelby County versus Holder, and defending voting rights in other cases, such as that case in Texas where they had a restrictive voter ID law. And the list goes on and on. The Affordable Care Act, which made it possible for many Black people to get health care insurance who did not have it. So there are plenty of things that Democrats have done, in particular, President Obama have done or has done, that are beneficial to Black people. So let's not pretend like Democrats haven't done anything in recent history that's beneficial for Black people. I just think that we need to educate ourselves, be informed about the issues, and stop going with these slogans that people throw around on here without any kind of substance behind them. Because there are plenty of examples. And then if you just look at like I said earlier, the fact that the Democratic Party nominated many Black people to higher positions in government. They nominated the first African-American president. They nominated a black candidate for governor here in Maryland. They nominated a black candidate for governor in Florida. They nominated a black candidate for governor in Georgia. They've nominated and elected black U.S. senators. So there are plenty of examples of what Democrats have done. You know, there's more that they need to be doing without a doubt. They are not a perfect party. There are plenty of issues that they need to address that they have not addressed without a doubt. But let's not pretend like they haven't done anything for black people. So Ms. Legit said the Democrats do not have a black agenda. It's not the job of the Democrats to have a black agenda. That's our job. We're not supposed, I think that that's a passive attitude that too many of us have. We think that we're supposed to just sit back and chill and wait for somebody else to present our agenda to us and beg us for their vote. That's not how politics works. I mean, all these other groups, they present their agenda to these politicians and they hold them accountable for their adherence to that agenda. And that's what, again, many black organizations do. Like a lot of the black organizations that a lot of y'all like to condemn and stuff like that, they present political agendas to these politicians and they hold them accountable based on those agendas. But these same people that want to talk about a black agenda, not a one of them are actually presenting one. Not one of them actually organized any kind of campaign to call your politicians or any of that stuff. Not one of them. Yeah, exactly. Living my life. I mean, that's a prime example of something that Obama has done. Yeah, I think that's a accurate statement. James Hall, it does take a high level of intellectual dishonesty and self-delusion to be a black conservative. That's so true because these people delude themselves into believing racism isn't an issue. You know, they are intellectually dishonest. They ignore and gloss over all these countless examples of Trump and his racism. And like fools, they put on those Make America Great Again dunce caps, despite all these examples of racism on the part of Donald Trump. Yeah, I feel you, Bonafide. I mean, it's like, I understand that the Democrats aren't perfect and they should be criticized and held accountable just like any other political party. But I think that too often, it's like we don't appreciate the difference between them and these far right Republicans. Here we had a chance to elect, the first African American governor in Michigan. I mean, not in Michigan, in Maryland and in Florida and Georgia and stuff like that. And yet we got people that are missing that opportunity by not even participating in the vote, by not even voting. After people fought and died for that right, you got people that are sitting on their ass, letting the most reactionary elements of society decide those elections. They had no problem with a racist like what's his name, Donald Trump being in the White House, a man that showed you that he has no respect for you, that he views you as stupid, that he has no respect for black women, calling this respected journalist of 20 years, 21 years, a loser. I mean, what the hell is wrong with that man? I mean, are any black men going to check that fool for talking about that sister like that? Are any black men going to check that fool for calling that sister stupid and saying that she has asked a lot of stupid questions? Are any black men going to check this man? Are any of these people on mainstream media, are you going to check this fool? Some of these, I'm missing a few comments, y'all. Hold on one second. Yeah, so I think I made my point about voting. I don't want to sidetrack this into a discussion solely about voting. Again, I want to have an open mic later on. I'll be glad to debate anybody live on this issue of voting. So I will just start off by posting the link in the description box for that one. I just have a question again, like why aren't any of these so-called Black women empowerment folk on here talking about how Donald Trump disrespects Black women? All these people that are so angry towards the Black man that disrespects the Black woman, but they don't have anything to say when the president of the United States disrespects Black women and Black people. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, so Water Sniper asked about unseen policies and laws in motion. There's no such thing as like there are no unseen laws. Laws are in the books, like laws are written, so there are no unseen laws. And if you want to have impact on policies or laws, you have to elect officials to enact the policies and laws that you want to see. But let me just continue on. Yeah, nobody's saying people should vote blindly for Democrats. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. Hold on one second, y'all. Yeah, so that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying blindly support Democrats without demands. Even though you do have some people that do that, to just vote for Democrats without, there are some people that do that. I'm not going to say that that's not a problem. That is a problem. But we shouldn't vote. Like, obviously, we shouldn't vote like that. And obviously, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm saying that we need to study these candidates, know their positions on all the issues, and hold them accountable. That's what I'm saying. We need to look at these candidates and find out what is their position on the issues that matter to us. We need to present our demands to them, just as many civil rights groups actually do, and find out their position with respect to our demands, and then vote on them based on their positions. And then if they don't live up to their promises and their commitments, then we need to, make sure that they're not reelected, hold them accountable. That's what we have to do. So I'm not one to say, well, we should just vote for somebody simply because they're Democrats. As I've said before, like, during the presidential election, I didn't vote for a Democrat. And there have been occasions where I voted against Democrats as a protest against Democrats. And I think that we need to be prepared to do that as well. So that's not what I'm saying. But I'm also saying, let's not pretend like the Democrats and the Republicans are one and the same when they're not. They're obviously not. There are fundamental differences between the two of them. And in order for people to understand that, they have to study the party platforms. Like, a lot of these people that say these parties are one and the same, I wonder if they even read the party platforms for the Democrats and the Republicans. Have they done that? And if you take that position, are you going to, in turn, vote for a third party candidate? And if that's your take on it, fine. I think that people should, again, vote for third party candidates as well if you're so against the Democrats and the Republicans. But to sit back and say I'm not going to vote and I'm going to let others make all the decisions for me, that's just not wise at all. That doesn't help us at all. Sitting at home and letting other people make decisions for us, that doesn't empower the Black community. And yeah, I mean, people should, I agree with you, if they aren't satisfied with any of the parties, then they can create their own party. They can create their own, or they can support third-party candidates. But again, these people aren't willing to do that because they're not about that life, man. They're not really about, advancing a political agenda. Unfortunately, a lot of these people are about promoting the idea of powerlessness and helplessness, and they're about making people dependent on them instead of trying to actually change the system. They want people to look to them for guidance so that they can stack up AdSense dollars and this and that and sell merchandise and products and stuff to people. As I said before, like, how is buying Hidden Colors Part 100 going to liberate Black people? How is that more beneficial to Black people than actually voting and making a difference in terms of these elections? But I could go on and on about this stuff. Yeah. So I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Again, I'm just saying we cannot let this president disrespect our women. So with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings to each and every one of you. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.